Alrighty, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Thanks so much for joining us once again for the AI monetization mid-year checkup. Pretty much the trends and surprises, what's been happening in 2025. Today, we have two guests who've been with us in the past, Mark Stiving, founder at Impact Pricing, and Principal Director of Subscription Strategy, Mike Mansard, who's calling in from Paris. So thanks again, Mike, for sticking with us for a late one on your side of things. And Stephen Forth, CEO and founder at Ibbaka. Yeah, I mean, just as the usual things go, recording deck, we'll edit it, cut out the fluff bit at the beginning. You don't want to hear us chatting when we're diving right into things, but we'll send that to everyone who's joined. Even if you got to join and you got to jump off in 10 minutes, we'll send that deck and video recording to you. All the resources and everything, emails, LinkedIn, links, they're all on the deck slides as well. So if you don't follow Mark, Stephen, or Mike already, any newbies here, I encourage you guys to do so. So we'll kind of jump in. I'll give Michael, Mark, and Stephen just a little bit. I know people who've joined before, I've heard them give their intros, but totally up to you guys if you want to do your thing, because I think we got pretty fill of a one today. So we only got 1 hour, but go ahead, guys. Michael, you can start if you like.
Yeah, excellent. I'll be quick. Michael, leading the Subscribe Institute, which is our think tank. Second, giving classes at INSEAD, which is a very cool business school. And last, investor and board advisor of multiple startups, including AI and agentic AI companies. So as I said, each time I talk with you, Stephen, a subscription geek.
Mark?
Okay, I'll jump in and assume I'm next.
Yes.
Let's see. I've written 4 books. I've been in pricing for 30 years. I am probably the Luddite of the group. I keep pulling these guys back, saying they're making too many big assumptions. And so we'll have a fabulous conversation today.
Thank you, Mark and Michael. I see you guys as sort of key collaborators. Stephen Forth, co-founder of Ibbaka, and more recently, co-founder of ValueIQ.ai, which is an agent that we are introducing to help salespeople actually be able to sell value and not just negotiate on price. And I'm excited about what we're going to talk about today. So Liam, let's get to it. So I think we can skip through this slide because we're going to be addressing all of these things. So why don't we dive in, Michael? Next slide, Liam. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, the poll first. Yes. Okay. Quick poll, just to get a feel for the audience and see, what people are doing with agents, because we're going to be talking a lot about agents. As a panelist, of course, I'm not allowed to vote, but I would, if I did, I would be down in 1, 2, 3. Yes, we'll have an agent in the market in the next 6 months. Mark, Michael, do you have any insights you can share with your own agent strategies, or is it too secret?
I'm not sure if I would say that I have something released or if I have something in planning. You know what I have, Stephen, so you could say which one I should have checked.
I would say that you are, yes, have an agent in market. Well, I don't know if it's in market.
I don't sell it.
And it's hard to find. Maybe we need to adjust this to, yes, I have an agent, and you will need an agent in order to find it. But
And on our end, we do have agents. So yes, multiple agents. I mentioned it recently to you, Stephen. We do have an agentic system that, especially in the media space, is quite popular, which helps optimizing when the paywall should be dropped, how it should be displayed, and what offer to display based on the client. It's a full autopilot, so it's a real agent, which is using reinforced learning. So quite interesting. Just one finding, which is going to be probably interesting for the rest of the discussion, what we've learned is the more you focus on the policies and the goals, and the less you focus on the rules, the better the results. Quite interesting.
It's very interesting.
All right, I'm gonna call it. Do you want me to share, or do you want to have a guess?
No, let's share, please.
All right.
Okay, so pretty evenly distributed, but skewed towards people who are still developing or getting ready to develop or thinking about developing agents. So great. Thank you, Liam. Let's go on. So if you're not developing an agent, this slide says why you might want to think about doing so. Michael.
Yeah, we discussed it. Again, we can keep it very short. We know, by the way, that agents, is let's say the natural continuation and expansion of generative AI. It's more than that, but it's kind of like the next step. We don't hear Gen AI that much these days. Agentic is supposed to be a 6 billion business today. It's going to reach, some analysts say 100, some say $200 billion by 2034. So that's going to be roughly a 50% growth year over year. And what we discussed last time, which is kind of new as compared to other technologies, the level of interconnectivity and the fact that vendors are starting to have interoperability, which would really help propel this growth.
Yeah. So this is a big opportunity, but are we perhaps getting ahead of ourselves? So can we take a look at the next slide, Liam? So Mark, you inspired us to add this slide. So what do you think? Are we over-indexing or getting ahead of the hype cycle on agents and agentic AI?
Oh, wow, that's really hard to answer. Um, what I would say is everybody should be thinking about it and focusing on it. And when I take a look at those, the 1 to 4 employees, so people that are running really small companies who are not using AI today, or even those who are, there's not a big enough percentage. I think almost everybody needs to be looking at it because it's going to change everything. So I'm shocked that we don't see more. But if you ask the question, who's actually selling it, who's actually implementing it, I think that's a much, much harder decision for people.
Yeah. Yeah, I was also, I mean, among larger tech companies, adoption is, asymptoting towards 100%. But when you look at the larger economy, I was surprised at how much of it's driven by company size, actually. I personally think that small companies have the most to gain because anyone who's run a small company, and Ibbaka's in that 5 to 49 group, man, you are so busy all the time. Anything you can do that will help you get your work done is incredibly valuable. And I would just add for, the largest item in Ibbaka's expense today, after people, which is of course the largest expense, but after expenses, the largest cost item for Ibbaka is AI.
But on the other hand, Stephen, do you remember it's probably a year ago, you dragged me kicking and screaming into this AI world, right? And the problem with AI, and I can imagine most of these companies are like this. The problem with AI is that we get exposed to these new technologies every single day. And it's like, well, which one should I jump onto? Or, should I be that or should I be this? And I wanted to ignore AI for so long. And I would guess that these people who aren't doing it today haven't had someone drag them into it like I did.
Well, I think we all better get to dragging because I really think if you're running a company today and you're not using AI, you're not going to be in business in the future.
I ask almost everybody that I talk to, how are you using AI today? And it's fascinating to see the answers you get.
Yeah, I have a podcast coming out on that, but that's a bit off the topic here. Michael, any thoughts on this? Oh,
Kind of aligns with what I see. In my point of view, I think it's a bit, you'd be surprised even, I think, at least for the European point of view, I think it's a bit overestimated. We have I would say some people have used it, but when I look at how many people use AI on a daily basis, I look at the statistic recently in France, for example, it's quite limited. So you start having a multiple speed population, if you will. A bit like internet in its time, but I think that it creates a significant gap in the workforce.
It's interesting to think about as we think about pricing these sorts of things. But let's go on. So, this if I compare where the world was when last time we talked, which was I think in January, to now, the big change that I'm seeing is that most major and even smaller enterprise SaaS companies are layering agents on top of their existing systems. And agents are slowly, or in some cases not so slowly, coming to replace the existing user interface as how you access their functionality. Doesn't mean that their existing software is going away, but how you interact with it, how you get value from it, is changing very quickly. And Gong, I think, is an example. I was surprised when I went to Gong's website. I guess it was about 2 weeks ago now that I noticed this. And wow, where did all these agents come from all of a sudden? Now, 14 is a relatively large number of agents, I think. So I'm going to ask you guys, Mark and Michael, if you were Gong, how would you go about pricing all these agents? Or is Gong going down the right path here with these, I think, fairly granular agents? Or are there other approaches to packaging functionality that might work better when you need to align with pricing?
Michael, I'll let you take that one first.
So if I just, I'll be a bit more probably precise when we go to Intercom, which I know better. But when I look what I see on the screen, it reminds me the old days of a la carte pricing. So they try to go, kind of like job to be done orientated, each agent, having a specific role, let's say at least. Now, from what we know, a la carte always drives anxiety and choice paralysis. Is it the right thing to do? I don't know. It really depends on how, the sales cycle or the product-led cycle is orientated. So they make it easy for the client to buy this. Maybe it's also a way for people to realize all the thing it can do. But for me, it kind of looked like, they put stuff and try to see what sticks. And I think it kind of makes sense because it's new. They don't really know exactly where the value lies. So, is it the packaging? I don't know. So is there like a layer of packaging on top? Are they actually providing, which what we've seen in early technology, an access to everything to actually measure the value, and then they would repackage accordingly? And something I don't see here, by the way, Stephen, just as a conclusion, is are there different level of depth for each of the agents? Can I actually get some agents that are, let's say, as good as someone fresh out of school versus a very senior BDR, let's say? And that could be another axis of segmentation for each of these agents, which I don't see here. So long story short, I think for me, that looks more like a list of features, which looks a bit like a la carte. And a la carte is, only a good thing in a limited amount of settings. That may be different in the future. We'll see, but we have tons of experience. I think Mark would probably tell that pricing hasn't changed, which I agree with. And experience says that a la carte is, usually not the best packaging model.
Thank you, Michael, for giving my answer. So you gave me time to think about this. And I think the answer for me is these are all features. And if I were trying to price for Gong, I would do what I do for any company and say, okay, what's the market segment we're going after? Can we define it really narrowly? And then can we craft the right product portfolio that solves the problems for that market segment? And I tend to lean towards good, better, best whenever I can make it work. And so I could see taking these 14 different agents and crafting them into good, better, best pieces of a package and putting prices on those. Now, I'm not an expert on all these, so I don't know that would actually work, but that's the way I would think about it.
Yeah, I think what I'm seeing in the market is a sort of bifurcation of approaches to developing agent systems for existing enterprise software. One is the sort of Gong style approach, in which one has really sort of purpose-built agents that do something fairly narrow. The other approach I'm seeing is something more like what Brighthive has done, in which they have mapped the agents to job roles in the organization. So Brighthive talks about, their agents as things that support, each role in the data team gets an agent to support a person in that role. But why don't we roll on? So I'm just going to frame this quickly. So we all love to talk about Fin AI because it was one of the early indicators that AI and AI agents were going to get to outcome-based pricing. And we all love outcome-based pricing as an idea, maybe not as a practical reality. But one of the interesting things that's happened with Fin AI here is that once upon a time, Fin AI was a separate thing, and you saw it separately on Intercom's pricing page. What you see now is that Fin AI is part of every one of their packages, and you can buy it separately. Even if you're not using Intercom, if you're using one of their competitors, you can still use Fin AI with their competitor. And additionally, if you look across at the pricing doesn't change across the packages, and it doesn't change if you use Fin AI with one of Intercom's competitors. So this is, I've thought this really interesting. Do we think that this is a sign of the future for other companies as well, or are there lessons we can draw from Fin AI and how it's approached agent pricing?
Well, so my thought here is that Fin AI has done a phenomenal job at understanding how they're delivering value to their customers. And so obviously the outcome base of resolution is a great place to price. And they've essentially said it doesn't really matter how many resolutions you get. It provides the same value for each resolution. So I think that's brilliant. And so it doesn't matter if it's a competitor, it doesn't matter if it's one of their products, they're charging per resolution. And so then they've also created that per user or that per seat. And that has to do with the fact that, look, I've actually got people at call centers that are trying to deal with calls that are coming in. And so they've done a really nice job at capturing the value they give to their customers. I think what we're going to see is it isn't the fact that they've bundled per seat with outcome. It's the fact that they've identified value. And that's what has to happen for all of the agents that we're going to look at as we go through this today, or even go through our careers. It isn't this is the right answer. It's the answer is how are you delivering value to customers?
I fully agree with the analysis. What I would add is a couple things. So I agree in the sense that it's the masterclass of pricing, what they've done. It's a masterclass of courage as well, by the way. If we step back for a second, they actually set such a precedent that every single player in that space had to follow: Sierra, Decagon, Zendesk. So again, that doesn't happen. That doesn't happen every week. These kind of things. That's quite massive. What's interesting is also what you described, Stephen, in terms of packaging. By the way, back in the day, they would present it. It was almost the same logic of pricing, but they would show it as almost as an add-on. Now it's part of the package as a mandatory attachment, almost, if you will. So that's quite interesting because it kind of shows that it's part of the core. It's part of the core, but again, as Mark said, in terms of margin, you still protect your margins because you pay per resolution. So more resolutions means more money. What's interesting as well is that because of that case, many people thought that outcome-based pricing is the holy grail. In the research that we discussed last week with Stephen, it's about 10%. So what I found is 10%. Cal Poyar did a research, I think yesterday, I think he released it, and he found 5%. So we're quite close. Let's say 5 to 10%, I think is a good thing. So what are the alternatives, right? So you could still have this kind of models, but maybe you can price on something else. So we discussed about pricing per activity. What is an activity? It's an hour. Think of Hippocratic in the healthcare space, where they actually charge per the hours of availability of a virtual nurse. It could be an activity in terms of a pseudometric. For example, Microsoft monetize security based on what they call SCUs, which stand for Security Compute Units. So it's a kind of quasi-hour type of thing. So it's an activity. Or you can actually charge per output. And when you look at that space, Decagon, which are also a customer service platform, they actually charge per resolution, which is the outcome, but you can also buy per conversation. And we discussed the exact topic last year, if you remember, Stephen, and we discussed about the fact that actually some customers are not yet ready to buy the outcome because they don't feel comfortable about that outcome. And maybe we all need to remember, that was also a discussion we had last year, which is the fact that in some markets, like customer support, people have been buying per resolution and per calls forever. You know, AI, it's nothing new here. And Mark, I think that was the discussion we also had a couple of days ago. That is new bottles, but old wine. People have been buying business process outsourcing contracts per activity, which was number of calls, or per resolution in the call center. So it's just a digital version of or digital twin of a existing agent model, which has existed for at least 20 years. So again, it was really courageous, but they could do it, and their buyers were already educated to buying it, except that it was the same model for a human, and it was usually 5 times that price.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of truth in that, Michael. Liam, why don't we go on to the next slide? So the other thing that we're seeing a lot is this emergence of credits or tokens or token buckets, or whatever you want to call them, as a dominant approach to pricing. And I think we could come up with 100 examples of this without breaking a sweat. And my impression is that right now, in the middle of second quarter of this year, credit-based pricing, is becoming a dominant paradigm. So I guess I have 2 questions for you guys. First is, are you seeing this as well? Is credit-based pricing becoming more dominant? And then my second question is this a temporary thing? Does this represent the immaturity of these markets where they're not sure what value is and how people are going to use it? So credits are a good band-aid. Or is this going to stick as a dominant pricing paradigm for agents? Michael, why don't you take a swing at this first?
So I think it's a mix. Let's look at Agentforce for a second. Agentforce, before they charge per conversation. And Mark just said something really interesting before. Mark said that the resolution always have the same value, right? That was kind of like the why. But now think about conversations in Agentforce. If I'm managing an HR ticket from an employee, or I'm closing a very strategic customer ticket with AI, the value of that conversation is highly different. I'm not willing to pay the same to close a topic with an employee on their payroll versus that strategic client. So that's why they moved to this credit system on which you actually pay roughly 10 cents per action. And in that case, you just say that an action, which is, for example, updating the CRM, is always 10 cents because someone who would have done it, there would be this cost behind. That's quite a smart move in that way. So now let's go back to your question. 10 cents, that's not a lot, right? But you still need predictability. So the credits is a great way, at least in the short term, to have clients tiptoeing in the model and committing to some amount of money that do not seem crazy and have some level of control so they can stop if it goes above that level. That's one thing. However, as things would unfold, people will actually want, people being customers, right? They would actually want to have some level of predictability. So I think it's going to still exist, especially for customers to probably test, but then they would be actually willing to commit to a certain baseline in exchange of a discount. If I'm a CFO and this is a 100K credit model, I'm probably going to have a negotiation with you and be willing to commit in exchange of a predictable price, a predictable amount, and you would be happy as a vendor to actually have a predictable revenue stream. And it's exactly the model again of the hyperscaler, for example, of Snowflake and so on. So again, nothing new. I think the same script is going to be repeating itself. Coexistence of models.
Yeah, so I almost agree with everything Michael said. The only thing I would challenge or disagree slightly with is I think the variance in value for usage can be captured with token-based pricing as opposed to credits. And I think the real point of credits is the uncertainty both from the seller side and the buyer side. Nobody really knows how much someone needs or is going to use. And so buyers don't want to, commit too much. They say, hey, we'll just take these credits and we know we're limited to this. And on the other hand, sellers sell the credits so that they know they don't get taken to the bank and someone overuses the number of tokens. And so I think it's just the uncertainty of it all today. And if you believe that, then that says to me that over time, credits are going to go away. So we'll stop seeing credits being a dominant pricing method in AI.
So we should put up a bet on longbets.org about what's going to happen with credit pricing. My problem is I'm not sure yet which way this is going to go. Mark, what you said makes eminent sense. But sometimes, pricing is full of frozen accidents where something that made sense at one point gets adopted and sticks. So, we'll see. But credit models have their problems. Let's go on to the next slide, Liam. Oops. Yeah, so the problem with credit models is that it's designing these systems, credit systems, is more complex than many people realize. But Mark, you said to me in a conversation once that most of these credit models are really some form of cost plus pricing.
Yep.
Do we think they have to be? Or first of all, I guess, Mark, I'm seeing the same thing. But Michael, would you agree with that? Many of the credit models that we see today are fancy forms of cost plus pricing.
Short answer, yes. Because if that's where I agree with Mark. It's linked to uncertainty. It's if it's not cost plus, it's kind of like random plus type of pricing. Because if you knew the value, then you'd use directly the metric. And if you knew the value, you'd have some idea of the consumption pattern, and you'd actually have a proactive. So I would say it's kind of a discovery mode or a cost plus most of the time.
Mark, what do you think?
Well, obviously, I do think that credits are mostly cost plus, but I don't think it has to be. I think you could say you could take almost any product and sell it on credit instead of selling it the way you sell it today. And so it's very feasible that you could go to Fin AI and say, look, I'm going to sell you 1,000 resolutions up front. And that isn't cost plus. That's just selling it up front. And so it doesn't have to be that way, but I think it is today because of the uncertainty and because the sellers want to make sure they're covering their costs.
And there's also something, I know it sounds very basic, but we need to remember it, is a lot of these companies are fairly young and they also want the cash upfront.
Yep.
So, it sounds, again, we need to remember that. And selling credits, if you're not yet sure about the value and you cannot have, as Mark was saying, the buy sudden conversations, because I'm not in a position where I can, say in an assertive way, you should be buying 1,000 conversation. I use credits because it's a proxy for money, right? So it's a way to get the cash up front as well.
Yeah, and I'm just going to go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, Jim Geisman had a really good comment in the chat. And that is another thing that credits do is when we've got all these different products and we don't know who's going to need how much of what, selling credits gives them access to a whole bunch of different things at once without nickeling and diming them.
Yeah, and thank you for that comment, Jim. I think that's exactly right. Let's go on, though, to something that I hope is going to put a little bit of a frisson of fear into the rest of everyone who does pricing and consulting. So I'm not sure how many people have played with vibe coding with Lovable and Replit, and there's probably 20 other similar systems available today. But I've been using them a lot in a lot of different contexts. So I use mostly Lovable. But one of the things that I discovered as I was mucking around is that Lovable will tell me what my pricing and packaging model should be. Which is fascinating, because one of the things that many people struggle with is their pricing and packaging model. And here you have Lovable generating it for you. So, Michael or Mark, have you or any of your customers experienced this?
I have not experienced it in any way whatsoever. And I will say that every time I've ever asked a question like this to ChatGPT, I get a horrible answer. So I can't imagine I would trust the answer that Lovable would give. But I'd love to see it. I think it'd be fascinating to see.
I haven't been till the way of pricing. I discovered that with you, Stephen, by the way, when we had a quick chat a couple of days back. If it's a transactional model or a very basic B2C model, they could make use of synthetic agents, which could be a way to do a pseudo marketing study and some willingness to pay. Analysis, you can do some of these. If it's a B2B product, I agree with Mark. I'm yet to see, let's say, general solutions being able to produce a pricing. Even you, I'm sure, Stephen, you use AI as a supporting tool, but the expertise is still not, at least from what I've experienced, reached in terms of pricing packaging, because there's so many variables and so many dimensions you need to incorporate. I think it helps assessing or reducing the fields if possible. It's not yet very good at making decisions around packaging, at least. I think packaging is the hardest part.
Yeah, so my experience, having looked at this across about 12 applications so far, is that it kind of sucks. And I feel sorry for the people that are relying on Lovable to generate their pricing and packaging. Having said that, though, I think we have to remember that the AI we're using today is the worst AI we will ever use. And, this stuff can get better scary fast. So I think that we are eventually going to see, first, a lot of application development is, I suspect, going to shift over into vibe coding apps. And their ability to price and package is going to get better faster than we think it is. And in fact, one of the things that Ibbaka may do, because Ibbaka is investing heavily in AIs to do this sort of thing, to do pricing and packaging, is we may go to people like Lovable and say, hey, we have a better solution for this part. Plug in Ibbaka's pricing model generator and pricing optimization AI, and it'll give you better results. So I think those of us in pricing and packaging and product design, we have to expect that this is going to rock our world.
Stephen, if I can just add something to this, which is quite timely, in fact. If you look at least someone like Replit, which does the same, today they charge in two ways. One, per action, whenever Replit helps you finalize some code, or per checkpoint. A checkpoint is a sum, it's a part of a build, right? Based on what you're describing, they're going to have to probably have very soon a rev share model, or an outcome-based model. They help you create something, that thing needs to be monetized, they want to take a fair share. So they have a vested interest in making sure that each of their clients maximize their own monetization potential, so they make more money if they start doing this market share, this marketplace model, whatever that is. So in that case, what you're describing, Stephen, makes perfect sense. If they don't strengthen their ability to price and package on behalf of their clients, then they're going to be leaving money on the table on which they're going to be taking a percentage. So cannot agree more with what you're saying.
That's a super interesting point. We'll have to draw that. That should be graphed out. Let's go on to the next slide, though. And this is the other thing that I've really been noticing a lot is, companies are not just building agents. they are giving their customers the ability to build agents. And this is also super interesting because rather than go, as an established software vendor, rather than going and saying, these are the agents that we're going to create for you, you say, here's a way for you to create agents. And it really gives them an opportunity to see what their customers really want. But this brings up all sorts of interesting pricing challenges. So I'm going to stop there and let you guys comment. Do you think that this is important and an important part of how people need to be thinking about agents and pricing? Or is this more of an edge case? Are virtually all companies going to, at some point in the future, include the ability to create agents? Michael.
I have a strong point of view on that. I think there's going to be specialization depending on where you play in the value chain, right? I think a lot of horizontal solutions, and we discussed that last year again, Stephen, right? A lot of horizontal agents are going to disappear. I'm pretty sure, because a lot of platforms, think of Gemini, the Ontario, let's say, Google Suite, AWS, all the hyperscaler are going to provide solutions that will help you create agents that will make a lot of horizontal Gen AI solutions potentially obsolete or part of it. So what remains? Domain expertise. And if you have domain expertise, then you can create a platform on which people can develop agent on top. Great example on that would be Hippocratic AI in the medical space, or Harvey AI in the legal space. Because there's so many places of health and law in which you can actually create hyper specialization. So, and of course, the risk of not being accurate in this space has dramatic impact. And there's still a notion of having a license to do something, license as in a medical license or a legal license. So I believe that it's going to be a way forward. It creates, a competitive moat. It creates an M&A moat as well for the company doing this, because they can acquire great agents. And of course, you start orchestrating. So long story short, in fact, again, Mark, I have to use what you said before. We're repeating the SaaS playbook to some extent, right? The Salesforce marketplace, the Apple marketplace. I think this is going to happen. It's probably going to be a bit more vertical than horizontal this time. The horizontal ones are going to be the ones that have massive scale, I'm assuming, right? Because they have a vested interest and a clear strategy to be able to be generic. So the big ones will be able to provide all the infrastructure and all the capabilities. And the ones that could really make a difference are going to be horizontal, i.e. industrial or very specific narrow use cases. So if that makes sense, Stephen. And we do have examples, Hippocratic AI today. If you're a licensed nurse, you can actually create your own nurse on the platform. And actually you monetize it on the platform, and you take a percentage of all the revenue that would be generated on the platform. Same thing for if you're an expert in voice, you want to use your voice in many movies and so on. It gives you opportunity to spread your voice as an actor across so many places and countries, things you could not even be doing, and you're going to be able to generate money with your voice if you're a specialist in that field. So I really believe that's definitely the future, but that's not going to be for every single horizontal. It's going to be pretty much verticalized and very niche use cases. What do you think, Mark?
I think I would generalize this concept into platforms versus solutions, which you've probably heard me talk about in the past. Right, so a platform can solve many, many different problems. A solution solves pretty specific set of problems. And so you can think of it as the difference between horizontal and vertical when we approach markets. And so I think there's little doubt that there will be platforms to help people generate vertical agents. Right, so the question becomes, what do those platforms look like and how are they going to price? And in reality, this is no different than vibe coding. right? This says, hey, I'm going to create a platform for you so that you can create a solution that uses AI to go out and solve a problem for the marketplace. And so the question is this what we're going to see? Is vibe coding what we're going to see? What's this going to look like? And I really like Michael's concept that said having a specialized platform is going to really help when it comes to saying which solutions are we going to build on that platform. So companies like Hippocratic, I think, are great examples of that.
Yeah, I think we're going to have to explore Michael's idea in more detail. Just started sketching out a 2x2 matrix for this, which I'll share with you guys later. But let's go on and look at the other side of this, though. Together with vibe coding and lots of new ways to create agents and deploy AI, we're also seeing a sort of explosion in agent marketplaces. And this is again happening much faster, I think, than we, well, I shouldn't say anyone, much faster than I expected. These marketplaces are becoming more and more, larger, more engaged, seeing more activity. But what impact is this going to have if is this on pricing? Is it going to, are these marketplaces going to impact agent pricing overall? And could they possibly lead to more transparency in pricing? So Mark, why don't we start with you this time?
Yeah, I think this goes back to something you and I talked about a very long time ago, Stephen. And that is that I think that the world of agents drives cost close to zero, right? It drives us down towards cost or pricing down towards cost. And these marketplaces are just going to help that out because, if I can go use two different agents and both solve the same problem, do essentially the same thing, then those two agents are going to end up competing on price, unless there's some way to differentiate. And I think that's going to be really hard once we know what the solution looks like. If you don't have some level of specialization, differentiation, then you're going to get competed down to cost. That's my thought. And these marketplaces are just going to help drive that.
Interesting. So they're going to burn differentiation out of the market fairly quickly, and you put that together with vibe coding, and the difficulty in creating moats and differentiation. So we've always lived in a world in what's differentiated today is commodity tomorrow. But that cycle often took 2, 3, 5, 10 years. So perhaps we're moving into a world where it takes 2, 3, 5, 10 months instead. But Michael.
I'm just gonna add one thing because I don't have much to add to Mark. There's just one thing I want to add, which is we don't see much, and I don't really know what it's going to look like, but there's going to be a stage in which the agents are going to be so creative that they're going to come up with new ideas. And in these marketplaces, that means that there might be new models that we don't really see that much with software, except when you actually commission a company to create something for you. And I want to talk about IP. So I think some of the agents are going to be able to create brand new IPs that you couldn't think of, or create new concepts. And that could lead to, I don't want to say new business models because it does exist again in real life. You can pay people to help you create IP. But in the software space, we haven't really seen it, except when you do a ad hoc contracting with a company. That could do it at a much faster pace. How do you share the IP? Most likely with licensing models, most likely with revenue share models, royalties and so on. But that's going to be done probably at an unprecedented speed in that space. So that's something we don't see that much, but I think that these marketplaces are going to employ new kind of business models. Again, they exist in the software space. There's many kinds of agreements. It's just the pace, the speed, and the amplitude at which it's going to be done.
So going on to the next slide. So Jim Geisman has a comment. Plus ça change, plus c'est la même chose. Hopefully I got my pronunciation okay there, Michael.
It's impressive.
But one of the sort of big debates that Mark and I have is is pricing changing? And I think there are two takes on this, right? One is, nah, you know, the fundamentals of pricing are based on the fundamentals of economics and value, and that hasn't changed. And the logos you see up here are up here for the reason that, these companies, Rolls-Royce, someone was saying the other day, it's what, 50 years since it's Power by the Hour or whatever Rolls-Royce calls that pricing model has been around.
Yep.
50 years. That's longer than most of the people on this webinar have been alive. And there's still things to learn from it. So, Mark, I'm going to make my case first.
Please.
And then you can tear holes in it. So I asked this, there was a webinar just before this that I listened in on with one of my favorite guys in pricing, Marcus Rivera from our, Ibbaka's competitor, Pricing.io. Great guy, great company. But I put this question into the chat of that webinar. And Marcos said, and I agree with him, that the dynamics here are different. AI allows you to create value faster, understand value faster, change what you're doing faster. It hasn't happened yet, but I think we're getting very close to a whole new type of configure, price, quote software, which configures based on value rather than on limitations to what can be sold. And that you put all these things together and you have to think about pricing differently. And you have to do this in part because you have so much more data available. You have so many more ways to analyze and understand that data, and you have so many more ways to act. And at some point, the change in velocity, which is a quantitative change, leads to a qualitative change. Now, I don't know if I said that very well. So Mark, take a shot at the target.
Yes. So here's the thing, Stephen. I don't disagree with anything you said. The thing is, that's no change in pricing, right? So to me, pricing is all about how do I understand the value that the customer is receiving? And so maybe I can understand it faster. Maybe my customer's value perception changes faster. Maybe I can change what I produce faster, right? The way I deliver value faster. All of that might be true. But in the end, it's always how much value am I delivering to the customer, right? How is that customer making a decision? And so to me, it's always the exact same thing. We may have different tools, we may have different speeds, but we've always had different tools and different speeds. So to me, it's the exact same thing.
Michael, do you want to be the referee here?
No, I agree with Mark. On this one, we discussed it as well. I brought again, the Xerox and the Rolls-Royce, and thanks for putting the logos on this ones. I always use it because, whenever we see, some new shining models, we try to say that it's brand new. No, it's not. What happens is SaaS woke up and just found out that the margins are not as good in AI, and that monetization is important, and that a pricing mistake can kill the company, essentially. There's been mistake in SaaS, don't get me wrong. So I would say one is the margin level are forcing SaaS to change. So SaaS is living its manufacturing moment, essentially. And second, which is exactly what you described, which is the speed at which you do it. So the only thing is that the fundamentals haven't changed. What has changed is that you have to do it consistently and at a pace and a granularity that is unprecedented. So the tooling changes, the muscle changes, but the fundamentals is the same.
Yeah, I want to add one more thing because I love what you just said, Michael. I used to teach pricing many years ago. I was teaching pricing, and I wasn't teaching SaaS or subscriptions. And people would ask me the question, so how does this apply to subscriptions? And I would answer, oh, it's the exact same thing. Now, I ended up leaving that role and I wrote a book on subscriptions and I realized how wrong I was. Right? But the real wrongness there was the fact that I wasn't thinking, hey, we have to win new customers. We have to grow our existing customers, right? And so there's a whole different way to think about it. But in the end, it's still who are we selling to and who are we pricing to, right? So where's that value? And so there's no doubt in my mind that AI is going to drive us to think differently about some aspects of our pricing, right? So one of the things you talk about a lot, Stephen, is that we're going to have agents that buy. I got to tell you, that's going to drive a different thought process as we think about pricing. But it's still, the theory is how much value are we delivering to our customers and how can we capture that?
Yeah.
I-
So I'm just go
If I
ahead,
can just
Michael.
add one last thing, just to confirm what Mark is saying. I think the general trend, and thanks, Mark, for highlighting it, is the more we advance, the more we're forced to right sell. You know, we were setting a product as a way to get an outcome. SaaS was getting closer to the outcome. Usage-based models in SaaS were getting closer and closer to the outcome. And with agents, we're almost as close as possible to the outcome delivered at the granular level. So the idea is that you should be selling exactly what the customer needs at the right time for the right value, and reconfigure whenever that changes for given markets. So I think what changes is the tooling that we have to actually make sure that we extract the right level of value every single time. That fundamental has always existed. It's just that the means, the tools, and the business models were not optimal for that. And we're getting to that point.
Great. Liam, I think we have one more poll that we want to put out there. So for those of you who are pricing agents, how are you pricing agents? And I'll just say right now that Ibbaka has not yet done enough research and run enough generative processes to be able to say exactly how we are going to price ValueIQ.ai. So we should have had another checkbox here, Liam, that says don't know. But,
Stephen, did you want to have another guess at this one, or?
well, let's just put it up.
Okay, I'm gonna call it at a minute, which is in 10 seconds, because we're kind of close for time. Okay. Not a lot of people took this one, but that's okay. All right, I'm gonna end it. And here you go.
Oh, that's surprising.
Interesting. Yeah, very small n, because you can only answer this question if you've already got your agents and figured out their pricing. I'm going to drive us a little bit faster here because I just want to call people's attention to two things. So can you go on to the next slide, Liam?
The Compass framework, or next one?
Sure. This is good. All I want to say here is that Michael and I and some other people at Ibbaka have been working very hard on a pricing model evaluator. We think we're making good progress, and anyone who wants to contribute to this research by having their pricing model run through our system, um, or in any other way, please reach out to Michael or myself. We are looking for collaborators on this, and I think we are going to find some very interesting things. Just go on to the Fin AI slide. Yeah. That one, yeah. So we've done this with Fin AI. We're going to redo it because we've upgraded the evaluation system in the last few days. But we are going to be just diving deep into this and looking for the patterns that we see. One thing I want to call out here, though, that I think is kind of interesting, is that when you talk about how good a pricing model is, I think you have to look at both sides, both from the buyer's point of view and from the seller's point of view. And that differences here are going to be super informative. And then one last thing, Liam, if you can jump ahead to the Value IQ. Yeah, so Ibbaka is launching its first agent, and we encourage you to sign up for the beta. This is an agent that is meant to walk along beside people in sales and really help them to execute on value-based selling. And this agent will be joined in the not too distant future with another agent that provides you with pricing coaching and pricing advice. And we see these two things as working together hand in hand. So I'm going to stop here and let Liam wrap it up for us.
Yeah, everybody. Yeah, thanks so much again for joining. I know we're cutting it close and we didn't get to those questions in the Q&A, but we'll definitely give them a read, and hopefully we can post that into a blog post. So yeah, first off, just want to say thank you to Mark Stiving for joining us once again. I know it's been a while. I think the last one we said was end of January, the AI monetization 2025 with Mike as well. So yeah, everyone, if you haven't watched our stuff and you're just watching us all for the first time, give Mark, give Mike, give Steven a follow. Mark's latest book, I think that was Instant Profits. Is that correct, Mark? Yep. And you know, he always puts out his podcasts on LinkedIn. I know Mike and Steven are very active as well on LinkedIn. But yeah, we'll be sending the deck, the edited video recording. Give them all a follow. Thanks to Mike for starting this at 7 o'clock your time. I know you got kids, so maybe next time we do one with you, we can flip it and we'll do it early in the morning. No, late at night for us, early in the morning for you. Because I think last time you joined us and it was a holiday and I felt bad, but you were cool with that. So, anyways, Mark signing off from Reno, Nevada. Mike signing off from Paris, France, and Stephen and myself signing out from Vancouver, British Columbia. Thanks so much, everyone.
Thank you.